One question that gets asked by folks who want to buy real estate overseas is, how do I get a mortgage? In this video, I'm going to not only explain how debt for foreign real estate works, but I'm going to explain why I proudly have zero debt. Hi, I'm Henderson, and if you watch any of our videos about investing in real estate overseas, what people will intuitively ask is, hey, how do I get a mortgage? What are the terms of a mortgage there? And I've spent a couple years really diving into this, working with hundreds of people, some of whom have asked the same question, and really kind of analyzing the motivations behind people who want to take on debt for property overseas. Now, obviously, if you come from a place like the United States, as I do, or any other developed Western country, mortgage financing for properties is cheap, it's relatively easy, and you can get a relatively high LTV, i.e. you don't have to put a lot of money down to actually get your property. There's very little cash out of pocket. So, in the United States, I once bought a house. I believe I put 3.5% down. And so it was basically pocket change, and I get to finance the rest at 3.75%. That's not a bad deal. But here's what I've discovered since I've gone overseas. Now, the most obvious thing that I've discovered is those deals really don't exist anywhere else. They exist in the Western world. If you want to go to emerging markets, if you want to go to markets where the currency is not the US dollar or the euro, you're not going to get those kind of terms. I know in Georgia right now, we talk a lot about Georgia. There are banks that are promoting 10% mortgage rates, like hurry in, 10%, or 8% in US dollars, and so, sometimes that could be a bad deal for folks. So that's the reality that exists outside of the Western world. Is debt is just going to cost a lot more money. The LTVs are also going to be a lot lower. I have a banker friend who works in Latin America who says, our deal for expats is 50-50. We put up half, you put up half. And sometimes, that barely even gives them enough security, because the kind of thing that expats want to buy, as we've talked about, are just overpriced. And so they need that level of security to make sure that they're protected making loans throughout the region. Here's the interesting thing that I discovered when I went back through all the hundreds of folks that we have personally helped, is that the people who were the wealthiest, the people who had decamillionaire, multi-decamillionaire status, were much less likely to have debt, even on their own homes, let alone on investment properties. Had a guy who had $50 million who was buying up little regional centers, little strip malls in the United States. Had another guy who was buying up student housing. It was all done with absolutely no debt. They just put the money in. Now, obviously, their cash-on-cash return is going to be less in that case. But what I also found, when I kept looking, was the people who had that level of money and were already living overseas. The guy who retired to Thailand had absolutely no debt almost all of the time. Now, that was a function partially of the fact that debt is harder to get in a country like Thailand. Again, LTVs are lower, it's more difficult, and everything's in a different language. But I think it was also an indication that when you live overseas, you can be more focused on using less leverage. You see, when you live in the United States, half of your money almost is going out in tax. Half the money you earn goes out in tax. And the same with Australia, Canada, the UK, all these Western countries. You're paying almost half of your money out in tax. You can feel the pinch, right? That's a lot less money in your pocket. And so it's hard just to save up money and go buy an apartment building when half of your money is just going out the door. And I think that a lot of folks, when they first get into this, they want to stay in that paradigm, okay? But there's an entirely different paradigm overseas, not only that debt operates differently and it's harder to come by, but there's just less of a need for it, okay? Me personally, I like the feeling of saying I own each of my homes. If I have a rental property, I own that. If I buy something, I own it. And I like having a certain amount of liquidity, so where when an opportunity pops up, whether it's a new residence or citizenship thing I want to try out, whether it's a new property. Right now I'm looking for some land. I want to eventually build a home in one of my places. I can do that. And I have the position to be able to do that. And I know that I'm not going to have to rely on debt. To me, being a business owner overseas and taking advantage of very tax-friendly conditions means I have to focus on growing my business. And if you look at our business, we have a service-oriented business. This is not a business that is doubling and quintupling and growing like a weed every month like some other businesses. But it does have pretty substantial year-over-year gains. And so my focus, and I think that the focus for an entrepreneur who's going overseas would be put more energy into your business. Put more money back into your business to get it to grow, to throw off more relatively tax-free or even totally tax-free cash that you can then go and do deals with without having to rely on debt. For me, one of the other things that really frustrates me about debt, I remember being in the Philippines 6 or 7 years ago, and I did find a banker who said, yeah, we'll give you like 60% of the value on new condos. Now, again, problem number one, we've talked about in other videos, new condos are often going to be priced higher than you could find a comparable resale for. So you're already paying more to get the debt, right? I mean, it's like getting 0% financing on a new car. The price of the financing is baked in. They're just raising the price to give you the 0%, right? So this banker offered me 60%. But the paperwork that was required, I mean, for me as a self-employed entrepreneur in the United States, it was hard enough to get a mortgage there, and they hand out mortgages like candy compared to the rest of the world. So imagine being in another country where the conditions aren't nearly as good. I actually had the same thing in Malaysia recently. They offered me 65% as well. But the paperwork in both cases was so substantial. And when you imagine, in a country like the United States, you work for your own LLC or your own S Corp, whatever the case may be. And again, every country, same kind of thing. But when you work for your own company in the United States, the mortgage officer pretty much accepts the paperwork from your accountant, right? You don't have to go to some government office and have it sealed and, signed off on in blood, because they generally accept documents that are domestic. Imagine you go to the Philippines, imagine you go to Malaysia, and your company is incorporated in, Hong Kong. Well, now you have this added distrust of the documents. Okay, well, your company's in Hong Kong, but your salary is paid to a bank account in Switzerland, and so we need that, and that needs to be signed, and then we need the Hong Kong, and that needs to be apostille. Oh, they don't have apostille. It's really just an operational challenge. So I love the feeling of saying I own things without debt, and I also understand that especially from the United States, you view that as like a litigation risk because everyone's always trying to sue you in the United States. That's something that doesn't really exist in a lot of other places. Not saying that you shouldn't protect against that, but I'm saying it's much less of a reason just to go out and have an encumbrance on your property. So the bottom line is, if you've got a growing business and you're pocketing most of that money, it's really not worth, in my opinion, the operational time, frustration, misery of having to run all around town just to get a loan on half of your property. When you go overseas, you have a lot of advantages that someone in a domestic market doesn't. And by the way, if you're looking to get debt, go overseas, build your business overseas, then go and invest in a country with lots of debt. But quite frankly, let's acknowledge a very simple reality about debt. It tends to drive prices up, right? This is why there's a college loan bubble in the United States, or student loan bubble. The price of the underlying asset, a university education, goes up because money is freely available for all. So I think that the fact that debt exists in those markets is already one reason why returns aren't as good. But you could certainly go and invest in those markets with your lightly taxed earnings overseas, but that's the bottom line. Not only do I like the comfort of just being able to say, I earned the money, I'm keeping most of my money, and I'm going to invest it without having to deal with these mortgages, but I also think I'm getting a lot better deals by doing that. That's why I don't have debt, and that's my perspective.
Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist. I wrote this book, which you can find on Amazon, to distill a lot of the stuff we talk about in these videos and a lot of the stuff I've learned over the last decade plus traveling all around the world, teaching you about how to legally reduce your taxes, build your personal freedom, and create wealth faster. Definitely get a copy of this book if you want to learn more. Now, if you want to watch more videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and make sure you click the notifications bell so you never miss one of our new videos with more tips on how to go where you're treated best. And if you're already a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur and you'd like to put these strategies in place for yourself, go to nomadcapitalist.com and learn about how I can help you.